Hey, welcome. So today we're going to talk about something that is so critical to any business, but it's something people get wrong all the time, and that's pricing. It's not just a number. It's this incredibly powerful tool that can either skyrocket your growth or, honestly, set you on a path straight to failure. All right, let's just get right into it.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the biggest mistake that trips up new businesses? Is it a bad product? Terrible marketing? Well, yeah, those things matter, but the most common and the most dangerous mistake is usually hiding in plain sight, and it all comes down to the price.
And that leads us right into what I like to call the underpricing trap. Seriously, this isn't just about missing out on a little bit of extra profit here and there. This is a super dangerous race to the bottom, and it can have really severe consequences for the long-term health of your entire business.
And look at this. This is the stark reality. A staggering 60% of new businesses fail within their first 3 years. And one of the biggest reasons for that shocking number? A lack of profit margin, which more often than not is driven by setting prices way too low from the start.
So what do we actually mean by underpricing? Well, it's pretty simple. It's when you consistently sell your product or your service for less than it's really worth. You are literally leaving money on the table every single time you make a sale, and you can't underestimate how big of a deal this is. Even being off by just 1 or 2% can have a massive impact on your bottom line.
And this is exactly how it can just cripple a business. We call it the death spiral. It all starts with those low prices. That, of course, leads to a lack of profits. And with no profits, you can't reinvest in your business, right? You can't improve your product, your service, your team. And what happens then? Well, your value to your customers starts to weaken, which puts pressure on you to, you guessed it, reduce your prices even further. And that's how the cycle just speeds up and heads towards total failure.
Okay, so if we all know underpricing is so dangerous, why on earth do so many businesses fall right into this trap? Well, it usually comes down to some really common and really powerful fears. So let's just confront these myths head on.
Does this one sound familiar? Yeah, this is the number one fear. But really, it's often just a symptom of something way deeper. It's a sign of an underlying lack of confidence in your own value. You're just not totally convinced that what you're offering is valuable enough to command a higher price.
And here's another classic. You've poured so much time, so much effort into a deal. You're at the finish line, and you just get desperate. You feel like you have to close it at any cost. This is such a common thinking trap, and believe it or not, it actually has a name.
It's called the sunk cost fallacy. The most famous example is the Concorde jet. Governments just kept pouring billions of dollars into it, not because it was a good investment for the future, but because they'd already spent so much. The lesson here is so important. Your past efforts are totally irrelevant to your future decisions. You can't throw good money, or in this case, good pricing, after bad.
Okay, and let's bust the biggest myth of them all. This idea that every customer out there is just a bargain hunter looking for the cheapest deal. It's just plain wrong. The reality is, most buyers are looking at a whole matrix of things: quality, service, delivery time. In fact, being the cheapest can actually be a huge red flag. It can signal that your product might be low quality.
And that's because price isn't just a number, you see. It's a signal. And our brains are wired to interpret that signal in some really interesting, and let's be honest, often totally irrational ways. This is where we get into the psychology of how people actually make buying decisions.
The key concept we need to understand is something called cognitive bias. What is that? Well, basically, they're mental shortcuts or emotional triggers that lead us to make bad decisions. And the craziest part is, we almost never recognize it's happening. We think we're being completely logical, but our brains are actually playing tricks on us.
One of the absolute most powerful biases when it comes to pricing is called anchoring. It's this idea that whatever number is put on the table first becomes the anchor for the entire rest of the negotiation. And it is incredibly difficult to move away from that initial reference point.
Let's just walk through a super practical example. Imagine a seller starts by saying, the list price is $1,000. Well, guess what? The entire conversation is now framed around that high number. But what if the buyer starts by saying, I was hoping to pay around $500. That becomes the new center of gravity. Whoever sets the anchor first has immense power in the negotiation. So if we know that low prices are a trap, what do the winners do? Well, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Most high-growth, super successful companies charge premium prices. Let's take a look at some real-world giants who have absolutely mastered this.
Just look at that number. 27,900%. That was the sales growth of a company called Innocent Drinks between 2000 and 2007. So how did they pull off this spectacular growth? By being cheap? Not even close.
That's right. They charged 5 times the price of the established market leader. One of the founders even said later that he thinks the high price might have actually helped their growth because it sent a powerful signal that their drinks were something totally different, something special.
And here's another company you've probably heard of, Apple. Their sales grew over 3,000% in 2 decades, and they built one of the most valuable companies in the history of the world by completely, utterly rejecting the low-price model.
I mean, this chart just says it all. Back in 2015, the average iPhone cost nearly 3 times more than the average Android phone. Apple doesn't compete on price. They never have. They compete on brand, on design, on user experience, and they charge a huge premium for it. And you see this pattern across all kinds of industries. Studies have shown that Amazon is often 10 to 15% more expensive than its competitors. The UK supermarket giant Tesco charges 13% more than its closest rival. They win on convenience and value, not just on cost. Okay, so we've seen the dangers of pricing too low, and we've seen the incredible success that comes from pricing high. So now it's time to turn the lens back on you and your business. Let's run through a really quick, actionable checklist. This is it. This is the single most important question you need to be asking yourself. Is your price holding you back? Or are you massively undervaluing everything you bring to the market? Let's find out.
All right, let's run through this quick price health check, and I want you to be really honest with yourself as you answer these. First up, do you have enough cash to really meet your growth needs? Second, are your profits actually higher than your competitors? What about this one? Do you review your prices at least once a month? Can you afford to hire the high-quality people you need to grow? And finally, are you relaxed about the role that price plays in your sales process? Now, if you answered no to most of those questions, that is a very, very strong signal that you are underpricing.
So I just want to leave you with this one final thought. What if you stopped seeing your price as a barrier, as something to apologize for, and instead, you started seeing it as a confident signal of the incredible value you provide? What would change in your business if you did that?